Today, I will open the media conference with some introductory remarks, and I'll be followed by 4 speakers, someone from Labour, someone from the food security movement, someone from the environment, and somebody from Idle No More. After the speakers have finished, I will have some concluding remarks. We're gathered here to launch Common Causes, a new assembly of social movements dedicated to defending democracy, environment, and human rights. We have formed this network because the threats to the values we collectively cherish have a common cause, the Harper agenda.
At every step along his government's path, Stephen Harper chooses corporations over workers. He intervenes in collective bargaining negotiations to award huge profits to corporations instead of putting that money into working families. Despite an over $50 billion surplus in the Employment Insurance Fund, less than half of unemployed workers in Canada receive employment insurance benefits. Now, Harper's kicking those workers off EI by forcing them to take minimum wage work hours from their homes. Canadians are increasingly finding it harder to save for retirement. To make matters worse, Harper changed old age security so future low-income seniors will not qualify until they're age 67 instead of 65. This is only a sampling of why we must stop Stephen Harper. Canadians deserve a decent retirement.
Food security efforts want to ensure that all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. And that is used by food security organizations across the country. Food security needs healthy landscapes and local and regional economies of producers and consumers within vibrant ecosystems. At this foundational level, Stephen Harper and the Conservative Party have failed Canada. Canada is on a path that ignores the needs of citizens and the natural world, all to control for corporate profits. In short, Mr. Harper just does not care. Instead, we have seen since 2011 election the dismantling of the foundation of food security by the Harper government in order to pave the way for unfettered corporate control of landscapes and waterways. Changes to food safety inspection, seed security, protection of fish species, protection of waterways and species at risk are only a few stripped protections connected to healthy landscapes and foodways. Mr. Harper and the cons do not care. In 2012, several former environment ministers wrote an open letter to Mr. Harper saying, "We believe there is genuine public concern over the perceived threat this legislation poses to the health of Canada's environment. Despite the significance of the legislation to date, the responsible ministers have provided no plausible, let alone convincing rationale for proceeding with the unusual process that has been adopted." They go on to question whether in fact it is politicians making these decisions or other interests. The problem still remains. It does not matter what the former environment ministers think. Their few votes did not elect Mr. Harper and the cons. Food insecurity will rise as the transformation continues, unless, of course, we stop Harper.
If you ask Canadians if they care about the environment, they say yes. If you ask Canadians, are good jobs, good well-paying jobs important, of course they would agree. But somehow the Harper government is pitting one against the other, and that really is an artificial way to look at things. Being Canadian, being a parent and being a grandparent, and knowing that Canada has most of the world's arable land, a goodly part of the world's clean water, huge resources, both non-renewable and renewable, means that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the future, to other generations, and somehow that's being ignored. But this bounty is a legacy, and we should be thinking ahead, thinking about the people that come after. When your premise is wrong, when your values are wrong, when all of this is not working, bad things happen, and they have. And they're happening in 3 main areas. There's an attack against environmental regulation, in the name of streamlining and other words that give fancy name to basically what is an erosion of environmental protection. There is a silencing of dissent, which is very important, and there is a cutting off of scientific research and information. But the silencing of voices of dissent is not only scientists, it's us too. We have labels on us, and I should have a t-shirt that says radical environmentalists, because that's what I would be considered by Oliver and Kent for protesting against the changes to the environment through all the erosion of the many acts. I mean, I'm just touching the surface. And so when you think about everything that's being done to the environment, it's so discouraging. You wonder where to begin. How can we possibly live with ourselves as Canadians? It's like suddenly we feel shame for being Canadians, whereas before we didn't. We have resources, we have creativity, we have research. We should be putting this for environmental good.
I don't know more seeks to advocate the interests of those who are yet to be born, of those who are yet to be born. It is a grassroots movement for the peaceful and responsible advocacy and expression of Indigenous voices, for the protection of Mother Earth, for protection of Indigenous rights and our sacred treaties. Legislative actions very much like those which opposition MP Harper decried in 1994 as putting MPs in conflict with their own principles by having to vote on a budget implementation bill that was only 21 pages long. If an omnibus budget bill of 21 pages was undemocratic in 1994, it cannot become any more democratic in 2012 when the legislation is 436 pages longer. The hypocrisy, of course, is palpable. We question the moral leadership of a Prime Minister who remains silent as the participants in a peaceful and democratic grassroots movement are set upon by the voices of racial intolerance. Despite the countless indignities First Nations people have endured, our elders encourage us, direct us to take on this movement in a peaceful and responsible manner. And as such, we engage in peaceful and responsible actions such as round dances, flash mob round dances. In the end, if we do nothing, will we be able to face our grandchildren's children? That we allow these things to continue and said nothing.
Many people are coming together across the world. We're gaining allies, and they're so important because we're all coming together to protect the water, to protect the land. Not only for us, for our babies, but for yours and your great-grandchildren that are coming. And it's so important because we have to work together. We have to be strong. And it's so important for people to educate themselves and to put aside any other things because it's not a racial issue. This will affect everyone because we all need the water, we all need the land, and we need it clean for our babies, the ones here, the ones that are coming, but also for the environment, for the animals that live on the environment. And I ask that everybody wake up, become aware of what's going on and the realities that we are facing right now, that you can make a change, become involved, stand up, because we cannot be silent. We cannot let this happen.
The movement to stop the Harper agenda is gaining momentum with this new alliance, and we intend to escalate the pressure to repeal Omnibus Bills 38 and 45 and other destructive legislation Harper has introduced. If Mr. Harper thinks he can introduce any more anti-democratic, rights-trampling omnibus bills without significant opposition, he best think again. Remember, 75% of eligible voters did not vote for Harper. So we certainly have to look at our electoral system. Proportional representational forms of voting are designed to make every vote count, very unlike the first-past-the-post system we presently employ in Canada. This is why 81 countries have moved to some form of proportional representation, and not one country has ever moved back to our form after experiencing proportional representation. If you want more information about proportional representation, go to www.fairvote.ca. From coast to coast to coast, we are united for common causes, and we will be organizing to halt the government's ongoing attacks on the environment, Indigenous rights and title, workers, and human rights. Those in power have pitted us against each other for far too long. Aboriginal versus non-Aboriginal, women versus men, immigrants versus non-immigrants. We must unite and speak with one voice to change the direction in which Harper's Conservatives are taking our country. So we invite everyone to join us in uniting our common causes and encourage people to get involved at www.commoncauses.ca.